What do you say, Cover Crimson subscribers, man? Hey, it's good to see you guys. The All-American Report. He's Mike Johnson. I'm Mick Gillispie. We do the show for you guys. So get in the comment section. Tell us what you think, what you want to talk about, and what you want to hear about. But this is an exclusive show, as you know, and we talk, Alabama football twice a week. And, Mike, Alabama plays Wisconsin. Only the third time in the history of college football that these teams have played them in Dallas. And then in I think 1928, was it? They played in Wisconsin. I mean, it's crazy, right? And now we're going back.
How long ago was the Dallas game? I can't remember how long ago that was.
Coker and those guys played him. So it had to be 2015.
Okay. I thought for some reason 2015 was USC, but I might be wrong about that. I guess that was
Jalen Hurts. That was 16.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm 1 year off, man, on my my Bama history. But yeah, man. I mean, I was trying to think the other day. Somebody asked me off the top here in Atlanta, had Bama ever played at Camp Randall? And I was like, I don't think so, dude. Like, nothing that I can remember. I don't even remember, other than Penn State, Bama really going on the road to playing a Big Ten team. So it's definitely an interesting matchup and kind of a one-off that you're not really used to, man. It's just one of those random games.
Yeah, and you would figure that these teams would have matched up in some bowl games, but Coker and the boys took care of them 35-17, Arlington, Texas, September 5th, 2015. And then the matchup before that, and I wonder if anyone's going to be at both games, right? It was November 3rd, 1928. Wisconsin shut out Alabama 15-0.
Was that before the Great Depression, or we're right there, right? We're right on the doorstep.
It was before, right? Or no, maybe it was right after, right?
Right at the end of the Roaring 20s, man. So yeah, we had to have been closing in on it at that point. But yeah, man, I don't know. I mean, we're closing in on 100 years ago for the first matchup, and I doubt anybody's going to be at both, Mick. But I would have taken being at just the one this weekend, man. But I'm not going to be able to make the trip up, unfortunately.
Yeah, look, for those of you that live in South Alabama, we're going to do the tailgate show record from the Old River Grill at the Floor Bama. That'll be Friday from 1 to 3. So, Mike, that gives me enough time to do the show, but not have enough of the bushwhackers with toppers, floaters, they call them, to get myself in trouble again.
Well, maybe I need to send the big unit, man. I see my dad over from Perdido, man. He'd love to share a cerveza or two with you right there on the river.
Hey, man, please send him over, man. I'd love to see him. Yeah, he was there for the most famous collapse of my career, which was 2016 at the Floor Bama, when famously you and I are on the air doing a show, and I didn't know that I wasn't educated on bushwhackers. I didn't understand that 151 was the topper on those things, the floater as they call them.
It's a rookie move, man. Rookie move.
I know. And then I was like Barney Fife at the water cooler when he didn't realize that Otis had put the moonshine in there. These guys had to take me off the air. You know the difference between media now and then, though, is that now we would just roll with it. I'd just be a drunk idiot on the air, and you guys would just make fun of me. Back then, it was like before all of this, it was like, oh my God.
Well, look, man, terrestrial radio deals with a little bit different legislation, if you will, than a couple of guys on YouTube and on covercrimson.com. So we're under a little bit different blanket here, so we get to have a little more fun.
Well, I guess we got to talk some football, but I don't know if I've ever asked you, what the hell did you think at that moment? I thought I was going to get fired when the hangover went away.
I was like, I'm going to try to see if I can save Mick's career here. I motioned to my cousin, who, if you've ever seen my cousin, he's absolutely, massive person. And I was like, dude, come over here. And actually, you know what, man? I've hosted many a radio shows since then. I think that's the first time I've ever run point on a radio show. I was like, Mick, I got this, man. Welcome back into the Tide Tailgate Show.
The worst part was Ben George was there with us, right? He did the pregame, but he didn't do the postgame. And when he realized what was happening, and I thought we were good friends. Ben. I thought he loved me. he gave me the worst stink eye of my life. Like, I've had nightmares about that.
Judgmental.
Yeah. He was not trying to have my back. He was just trying to stare. He was trying to send daggers through his eyes through me. I've had nightmares about that look.
He thought the ship was sinking all around all of us. He was like, we're all going down for this nightmare. So, yeah, man.
Well, we're going to try to avoid that on Friday. And look, come and sign up for Cover Crimson while you're hanging out with us on Friday. Coker's going to be there. I think Ryan Anderson might be there as well. But we want you to sign up for Cover Crimson, and you guys are already signed up. But to your friends or anybody that's kind of on the cusp, help us build this thing, because that's what we're trying to do. And you guys that are watching this are part of what we're doing here. And it doesn't matter how many people watch this or don't watch this. It's your exclusive content for being a member of what we're doing. And so we really appreciate you guys. But let's talk Alabama, Wisconsin. For the record, I love this matchup. I really appreciate college football for, kind of changing and evolving, where now instead of this matchup being in Dallas, they're coming back to our place next year. So that'll be cool, right? To get a chance to play a team that, has a lot of college football history. Luke Fickell now the head coach. And just getting into the X's and O's matchup of this, Alabama faced Luke Fickell at Cincinnati. They didn't have the guys up front to beat Alabama. I mean, we just basically ran over them. Should have better talent at Wisconsin, definitely more resources. What are the things that you look at in this matchup that Alabama should be aware of when it comes to Wisconsin, and where do you think Alabama may have some advantages?
Well, first of all, and if you haven't paid much attention to Wisconsin, Phil Longo is the name you're kind of looking at right now. Phil Longo was the offensive coordinator at Ole Miss 5 or 6 years ago, knows about Alabama, and more specifically knows more about Nick Saban's Alabama than he does Kalen DeBoer's, but knows kind of the personnel that Alabama utilizes and kind of the style that Alabama plays with. At least it did 5-6 years ago. I've said this term to you. I've used it a couple times this week. It's like Wisconsin's having a little bit of an identity crisis, right? I mean, you look at what they're doing out wide, and really schematically in a lot of different ways. It's very Mike Leach-esque. It's very air raid. It's a lot of mesh routes, rub routes on the outside. A lot of empty backfields or 4 wide and things like that. But in the middle, it's still the same Wisconsin offensive line. It's still road graders. It's still north and south movement. It's not, they're not doing a ton of gap scheme style stuff. I mean, there are duo plays, inside run plays, a lot of things where the quarterback, Tyler Van Dyke, is going to hand it off and kind of just allow the running back to pick a lane, pick a hole behind that big offensive line. So out wide, you have Washington State, Texas Tech from 10, 20 years ago. And right up middle, with the 5 guys you have right there, you have Wisconsin of old, right? It's just the powerful run game. So it's very interesting. It's almost like a science experiment, Mick. It's like, man, can something like this work at a place like Wisconsin? And I think that's what they're trying to figure out for sure as we move into this weekend.
Yeah, and that's what the fun part about this matchup is, that you get conflicting styles, right? But I mean, this will be one of the biggest games that Camp Randall's had. I know they've played Ohio State, and I know they played Michigan, and teams in the Big Ten. But to have Alabama come to town is always a huge deal for Alabama, for the team entertaining Alabama. And it's a long way from Tuscaloosa to go up there to Madison, Wisconsin. I worry about just a couple things. Wisconsin hasn't shown a lot, and they haven't been dominant in the 2 games that they played. But you can't look at that and say, hey, that's going to affect the way that Alabama plays there on Saturday. Now, for Alabama, they've shown explosiveness in both games, right? And that has masked to me some of the inconsistencies that they've had in different spots. The Alabama got run on a lot last week by the quarterback of the Bulls, South Florida. They struggled on the offensive line. The week before that, it never really felt like they got in sync, but then they would just hit a big play, and they scored 63 points, didn't give up any, but I didn't feel like it was still their best game. I just felt like it was one team that it was superbly more talented than the other. Alabama should have more talent, but at the same time, you got this is a place that Alabama hasn't been, and it could be a style that gives them trouble.
Well, too, and let me, before I go into detail, let me ask you this question. This was presented to me is because I don't believe this, but somebody mentioned that they think that maybe this is a trap game for Alabama. Do you consider this a trap game?
Man, I've thought about this too. You got the week off.
Right.
And, Wisconsin has not looked great in their wins.
Right.
And you got Georgia week 5. But I just don't feel like going to Wisconsin is a trap game. I get it. Like, to me, they're equivalent to, I don't know, like an Arkansas in the SEC, which can be a dangerous game. I think that if you're playing at Alabama, you got to be excited about it. Gino Vandermark transferred from there. Coach Cap came from there as well, the offensive line coach. So, I mean, you got like some guys that are going to be really motivated to win this game. But I just think that it's one of those games that you circle, man. I mean, it's a helmet game. I mean, look at the helmets. I think we're going to be ready. I don't see it as a trap game. What do you think?
I'm in the same boat. To me, I get it. You could either be looking ahead to the bye week, you could be looking 2 weeks down the road to Georgia. But I think when you go in and to a Power 5 or Power 4, whatever calling it now, and you go on the road and you go to a Big Ten stadium, especially like this one, I don't know how you could be surprised by anything that's going on, right? I don't think to me, trap means surprise. You know what I mean? Like you've just been ambushed and you didn't expect it. I think you've been expecting this one since the season started. But I mean, look, you mentioned it. They haven't exactly, been able to move up and down the field methodically the way you think of for Alabama teams. It's like I would rather Alabama get 5 yards at a time on the ground than, 2-1-15, 2-1-20, 2-1-30. You know what I mean? Like I'd rather you get 5-5-5 and be able to do it methodically. And you mentioned Alabama's got more talent. They do. But I think more so than anything, Alabama has more athleticism than Wisconsin, right? I mean, it's not the same style as South Florida, but Byron Brown for South Florida, the quarterback, I mean, that's a guy that you have to absolutely be worried about his legs. And he showed that the other day. He can get loose. He can have the explosive athleticism style plays with his legs. Tyler Van Dyke's not that guy, right? Tyler Van Dyke is very much Will Rogers-esque, where he's going to dink, he's going to dunk, he's going to throw crossing routes. He'll have accuracy on the crossing routes. Probably won't beat you on the deep ball, and definitely isn't going to beat you with his legs. So, this is one of those things. I get more worried as we move into the SEC schedule about what Alabama has shown so far. But actually, in a weird way, I think it's a great matchup for Alabama. I don't think Wisconsin's defense is going to choose to move side to side the way South Florida's front did and run all the stunts up front, because then you lose gap integrity. And Alabama showed at the end that gap integrity matters. They showed in the first and second quarter that it matters as well, but it kept getting called back, right, because of the penalties. So in a weird roundabout way, I think this game matches up well for Alabama, that if they can get Jam Miller, Justice Haynes, Jalen Milroe, Ryan Williams, all those guys just get a little space, they'll make the guys from Wisconsin miss and be able to put up explosive plays again. So I'm with you. I think the methodical drives have to come at some point in order to reach your goal. I don't know that this is the week that I'm terribly worried about it.
Coach Hitchler is the one that came from Wisconsin, not Coach Cap, who came from Baylor. But whatever. I mean, like, I agree with you, man. That's the part about this matchup-wise that you feel comfortable with, because you what's going to give Alabama trouble? You think now who knows if they have trouble stopping the run when it's coming, and it's not like some kind of spread offense type thing where, they're setting up the run to throw deep, like we just saw last week. Alabama with Nick Saban dominated this style of play. And think about the whooping that these guys got in 2015. Michigan State played Alabama twice and got a beatdown. Really, Michigan winning last year in overtime was, I thought that their style didn't really work against Alabama, but they had a great quarterback that made some plays, and Alabama made too many mistakes. But at the same time, going back and looking at it, when Penn State played Alabama, that whole Big Ten style of play, the slowness, they just dominated against those teams. It's going to be interesting to see if that continues without Coach Saban.
Well, too, look, I mentioned the fact that Wisconsin's having an identity crisis. Maybe Alabama is too, right? Maybe this is, the Michael Penix style that you played with, is different than the Jalen Milroe style, right? Maybe you had to go back to Michael Penix at Indiana to look at really what you want to do, offensively. So, look, I think there are going to be ups and downs. I think there's going to be hiccups in Kalen DeBoer's first year. It just is. I mean, this is not, and I've tried to warn people about this, man. This is not hit the ground running. And just because it's not the same thing that Nick Saban did, just because Wilkin Formby's not getting his butt chewed on the sideline by Kalen DeBoer, doesn't mean that it can't be successful. Everybody has to understand, Mick, and you and I have talked about this. We are entering a new era of college football where guys can simply pick up and move on, right? It's the accountability's not there. That's why Nick Saban's not there. So Kalen DeBoer has to approach this differently, and I think he has, and I think he will. And so I think it's up to Alabama fans to kind of take all that in and allow this team to establish its own identity. If it's a team that's built on explosives, then it's going to work a lot of the times because you have explosive players. But to your point, methodical, slow drives is the reason Wisconsin went out and hired Luke Fickell and Phil Longo and everybody else up there, because they were tired of seeing it and they wanted to move on to the style of offense that they thought could be more explosive and lead to better results. So maybe it is two teams with, identity problems. And they'll both be trying to establish those identity this weekend. Wisconsin looked just like Alabama did last week. Look at their game against South Dakota. They struggled as well. So, we'll see what rolls out there when Alabama and company head up north. But I'm not terribly worried about this matchup in particular, I guess.
Yeah, we're going to find out if Alabama's athleticism is tough for Wisconsin to handle, and how Alabama does on the road. It's felt like Alabama hasn't been the same dominant team on the road over the last 3 or 4 seasons. One of the theories was, started hearing a couple of years ago when they lost to LSU and they lost to Tennessee and they struggled in some other road games, that there was a lot of self-induced pressure for them to be successful because they were trying, they had some anxiety and it was, part of the issue that they were dealing with. Instead of being confident, they were nervous. They were worried they were going to make mistakes. I feel like Kalen DeBoer's style of coaching will make it easier for these guys to just go relax and play football. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think you're probably right. And first of all, let's trace back what you said about Alabama not being the same team on the road as they were a few years back. I think there's 2 things that happened in that time. Number one, when Kirby Smart and then Jeremy Pruitt kind of left town, I think in a lot of ways that front 7 on the defense changed a little bit. And not personnel-wise so much, but, you go back to what they were when they were playing like Leonard Fournette, and you had Reuben Foster and these guys just ripping into the backfield and building that wall, using the bodies of the other offensive line to build a wall and not, and give the other running game no holes. And that allowed the back end to kind of get loose and take over. And then, eventually Alabama has now offensively gone to this, Mick.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just a different brand, right? I can distinctly remember, playing at places like Jordan-Hare and LSU and the quarterbacks getting under center and having a hard time hearing them. But you never even thought about doing that. It was maybe a head bob here and there, but the whole clap thing, it's just it's a different era, man. I try not to get caught up in any of the, the get off my lawn, old man yelling at the cloud kind of stuff, but it's different. I just think like I said, we have to give Kalen DeBoer's Alabama time to create an identity, right? And it's for better or worse, we're never going to see what we saw under Nick Saban. We're just not, man. It was the greatest dynasty in the history of the sport. And so I think Alabama fans, And I hear him, and I talked to him some this past weekend in Tuscaloosa. It's like, well, it doesn't look the same as what Nick did. Buddy, nowhere ever has, okay? And never will again. So, I don't know. We'll see, man. I just hope Bama, Jalen Milroe, Tyler Booker, the leaders, I hope they go in with the personality this weekend of it's us against the world, right? Mm-hmm. Our backs are against the wall. We will fight our way out of this stadium if we have to. That's always the attitude we try to take in, and so I hope that's the mindset. I hope you can see it in their eyes when they're coming out of that tunnel Saturday.
I hear people say that it's not the same, but it wasn't the same for Saban over the last 3 years anyway.
I agree.
I mean, like you and I talked about it off the air. Like, can you imagine Saban when you played allowing bad snaps 25 times during the course of a season and not correcting it? I mean, come on, man.
No, and you know what's different about it, Mick? You know what we would have done? We'd have gone under center. I mean, it's just that's what we would have done. We would have gone, and it would have been, hey, well, guy can't shotgun snap. Guess we're going under center. Mm-hmm. And it's just different, man. It's just Lord knows, I saw Alabama run wide zone out of a shotgun set last week. I mean, I heard Joe Pendry. I could hear him in my brain yelling, "You can't run wide zone out of shotgun." And why can't you run wide zone out of shotgun, Mick? Well, because in shotgun, the running back is starting behind the backside tackle, right? And that really brings in the backside of the defense as something that can stop the running back who's being offset to the side of the quarterback, right? If the running back's over here and so is the backside of the defense, they can all catch up to the running back. So you have to run it out of pistol. You have to run wide zone under center. But our athletes are so much better right now that sometimes little details like that don't come into play at Alabama. Mm-hmm. But eventually they will, right? And it just I'm with you, man. It's like it's hard to watch sometimes, and it's hard to watch because you know why, Mick? You feel like every small chink in the armor means it's coming to a close.
Yeah, right.
Every little thing, you feel like you're just going to fall off the cliff, and you're never going to see it again. So
that's what this game is to me. I mean, you lose this game, and it's not just that you lost a game on the road. It's that you just lost a game that you're supposed to win at Alabama, and and that's the expectation. That is the Bama standard. Going into this game, this is a team that you should match up against and beat, and you should be ready to go in there and take care of business. That may not happen, but I'm afraid of that. I saw it last week, and then all of a sudden we were Alabama again that fast, right? So are we going to be like the Saban teams? Are we going to take that step forward? Every time we had a game like that, Saban would get in your guys' asses so bad about all the detail that you didn't do, that you were ready to make it happen the next time around. You were fired up for it, ready to go. And that's the question that I have. How does Kalen DeBoer use an experience like that and get the most out of this team? But I feel like that the fact that, and it reminds me of when Gene Stallings left Alabama. Gene had instilled this culture, and they handed it over to Mike DeBoer, and it took Mike DeBoer 4 years to absolutely have everything, turned over in Alabama be not a good team anymore. But that last year when he had those guys that were freshmen under Stallings, won the SEC, and still had that. It's like when Bobby Knight left and Mike Davis lost the national championship game to Indiana. You still leave your DNA. LSU took the Saban DNA and won a couple of championships with guys that I don't think were great coaches.
Yeah.
So it can happen. I mean, and DeBoer, I think's a really good coach. So I'm curious to see how this translates.
Well, and let me put this warning out there, Mick, that anybody who watches this weekend, and I don't think Wisconsin's a great measuring stick for this, but if it had been one of the other, top 5, top 10 teams and you were going on the road to play, the echoes of, well, this isn't Nick Saban's Alabama team, it would have been different under Nick. It's just not true. Mick, it's just not true. Those Saban teams from 10 years ago wouldn't have lost these kind of games. And I don't think, though, like I said, I don't think Kalen DeBoer's team will lose this weekend. But look back to just last year. Nobody ever comes into Tuscaloosa and beats Bama. Well, Texas did. You would have never seen yourself losing a playoff game because of bad snaps and mental errors.
Yeah.
And Bama did.
That's right.
Right. So I just think we have to get over this hump of it's supposed to look a certain way, now that Nick Saban's gone. It hadn't looked that way. It didn't look that way at the end of Nick Saban, even though you went back to the playoffs. So, the whole 4th and 31 a year ago, that game should have never been the way it was either. It's just different. It's a different brand of football. And I just hope that most people are just going to allow this to kind of take its course and take a breath, because I feel like the more negative energy that's put towards it, the worse it's going to be. Right? Keep the positive vibes, get Kalen DeBoer's back, and allow him to do the same things, that allowed him to be successful in Washington and changing that culture around.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Love what you had to say, man. We'll get back together next week, and again, we'll talk about what happened in Wisconsin. Next week's an off week, so it'll be a little bit more laid back. But you guys get in the comments and let us know what you want to talk about. Go on the message board underneath where we post the show. And anything you want to throw out there at Mike, I'll ask him and we can talk about that. But we appreciate all of you guys for being subscribers to Cover Crimson and covercrimson.com.
Mick, Let me ask you just one question before we go. What score this weekend would make you feel comfortable about where Alabama's at under Kalen DeBoer?
None.
Not 42-0.
Now, ask me that after Georgia.
Yeah. Okay.
Look, they could win 35-17, which is probably what I would think that this game should be around, maybe 24-14, something like that. But I want to see what they do against Georgia, Mike. That's where I'm going to know who these guys really are. I mean, and if Georgia comes in and they can't move the ball and they get their ass kicked, we're going to know that it's different, because that's one team that's been bullying everybody around playing Alabama football with Kirby Smart, but not us. So yeah. I guess I'm just looking for these guys to go out there, figure out a way to win the game, and then take a week off and get ready for a war in Tuscaloosa. I don't know. What about you?
I'll say this, and because I asked you to score, I kind of set you up in a bad way. I'm not going to be looking at the score. I want to see two stat columns. Kane Womack's talked about turnovers from the defense. I want to see if they can pick off Tyler Van Dyke or cause fumbles in the backfield. And I want to know what the penalties look like. You've already got 20 on the season. That needs to be more about 4 or 5 a game if you're going to be able to compete with the Georgias of the world and make a run in the playoffs. I want to see turnovers. I want to see penalties. I want to see a lot of turnovers and not very many penalties. So we'll look at that instead of the score column after this one's over.
Yeah, really. And an offensive line that might not have the same challenge that it had last week, where you got guys blitzing from every direction, but might. I mean, look, if Wisconsin, they watch that film, are they going to go in there and go, hey, we're not going to blitz this guy? No, they're going to get in his face. There's a risk, because if you don't get to him, he'll run down the field on you and score a touchdown. He's an explosive playmaker. But the other part, the reward, is that sometimes his decision-making is questionable. You see him running back and like he's playing flag football on the rec fields and just keeps running back thinking that he's going to make something happen and then gets sacked for a 20-yard loss. So we've seen him do that before. We also saw him throwing the ball away towards the end of the game. So, at the quarterback spot, Bryce Young tried to make things happen sometimes and needed to throw it away, although he was really, really good at throwing it away. Tua never quite figured it out until he got his hip broke, right? And Milrose got to kind of be smart and get rid of the ball and play another play and not take those sacks. But I got a feeling that they're going to try to pressure him. And I don't know. I mean, this is just – it's such an interesting matchup to me because of – I think Wisconsin's offense is going to have trouble against Alabama's defense. But then again, when you see a quarterback run for – all those yards against Alabama and a lot of explosive plays last week, maybe they exploit more of that.
I think it's such a double-edged sword, because I think you look at South Florida and look at the success that they had pressuring, and a lot of that was just 5-man stuff and kind of stunting up front. When you do that and you leave lanes open, maybe Jalen Milroe's not throwing the deep ball well like he did last week. Maybe he's not hitting the cross routes or throwing it away. But, boy, he breaks one of those tackles from one of those blitzers. You might as well put 7 on the board if you're Wisconsin, because your safeties ain't going to tackle him. Your corners ain't going to tackle him. So I'm with you. It's going to be a chess match from start to finish about what you want to do and the risk you want to take. So on the flip side, I think Bama I think they are pinning their ears back in a way they haven't in 20 years this weekend against Tyler Van Dyke. And I don't think look, if he gets loose, maybe a first down, maybe, I don't know. Right. But Jalen Milroe gets loose. It's 50 and 60 and he's running away with it. So it's going to be interesting, man. I guess we'll find out soon enough.
All right, guys. We'll have a great weekend, Mike. Roll Tide. We'll talk to you next week. Thank you, guys. And also, don't forget that we're brought to you by our entire channel by MyBookie, mybookie.ag. Use the promo code NEXTROUND. They'll double your initial deposit. So, hey, put your money where your mouth is. You want to wager a little cash? Do it at mybookie.ag. And maybe you take Alabama. What's the spread right now? It's like, it started out at like 7 or 8 or 9, and it's all the way up to like 14 or something. I mean,
I saw it at 16 yesterday.
No, so, come on.
Yeah, I swear. Yep.
Those guys, they probably watched that game and saw all those holding penalties that they didn't even need to have. And we're like, man, all this guy's got to do is let go of this jersey. The dude's not catching him anyway.
You watched Wisconsin as well. And it wasn't, like I said, Wisconsin dealt with a lot of the same things and struggles against a South Dakota team that ain't nearly as good as South Florida. So as much as you might be down on yourself, if you're an Alabama fan, about what you saw last week, promise you Wisconsin feels the same way. They're not feeling good about this weekend either.
All right, Mike, roll Tide. You guys roll Tide. Thank you for being subscribers to Cover Crimson. Share the word, man. Help us get more people on here, and we'll do it again next week.